The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lighting Controls Podcast. We have another fantastic guest for you today, but before we get into the conversation, let me take a minute to remind everyone that today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association, and also Light Fair, May 4th through 8th, Las Vegas, Nevada. See you guys there.
And it's also financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes, a lot of other stuff, but also information about the Lighting Specialist in Controls certification. If you want to learn about the lighting controls world, get some definitions refined for you, and really get a certification that's going to help you take your career to the next level, definitely check it out. So, but also huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode. We could not do this without your support. MaxLite, maxlite.com/CMAX. CMAX is their lighting controls platform. They have a really interesting platform that is worth looking at and understanding. We actually have an episode number 82, titled "Don't Charge Your Phone in This USB-C," because it uses USB-C patented technology to allow you to swap out controls components on your LLC platform. And you can go from basic to networked and easily set it up, program it, and be out to the races with your lighting control system with just very simplistic components and easy to do system. So I highly recommend that you check it out. Check out the episode if you want to, because Umesh is an absolute blast to chat with. And so highly recommend it. maxlite.com/CMAX. But let's get into the conversation. So today we have Andy. Andy, do you mind just giving us a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hello everybody. Andy Bull. I'm a director of design at Lighting, Audio, Video Projects, and also Eclipse Lighting Design. My background, sort of getting close into lighting, was smart homes and integration, and video got a bit complicated with HDMI, and I wanted to go out and do my own thing, and I quite enjoyed the lighting control and the lighting. It was quite straightforward. So I went out and ventured out into lighting, and sort of wanted everything about lighting control and lighting design and the like. And that kind of led me very strongly to where I am now, which is lighting design, primarily residential, high-end residential, hospitality, restaurants, bars. But we do factories and offices as well. That's that's straightforward enough. And it will still do some integration, of course, because it's great once we're doing the lighting. Then people say, oh yeah, I noticed there's a cinema room on here. Did you know that was my background? We can do a bit of that. So that's always very good. And I guess one of the great things for me with lighting is I've been heavily involved with CEDIA and help them with lighting a lot. And that puts me in touch with a lot of great people, and they put me in touch with people, and we do a lot of teaching and help and hopefully a bit of a support through that. So that's kind of how we've ended up sitting here tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And just for our audience who might not understand the acronym CEDIA, do you mind just defining that?
Yeah, so it's the Custom Electronic Designers and Installers Association, CEDIA, CEDIA.org, and it's basically a trade association for integrators and smart home installers and people like that. It's got something like about 4,000 members worldwide, and they run the CEDIA Expo in September in Denver, where all the integrators get together, and also heavily involved in Integrated Systems Europe, which was February in Barcelona, which is a massive show. It was something like 80,000 or 90,000 people this year. It was huge.
Wow.
A lot of the Americans, people are going, Oh right, that is a big one, and it's a fantastic show, and yeah, Barcelona's a great city to get to as well. So
For sure.
yeah, so cedia.org. You check it out at your leisure.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for joining us here. I think we are getting more and more guests from the residential market, which is really great
Yes.
because the commercial market just has very little insight into that side of the industry. Even though they share similar technology, share similar terminology, there's actually a pretty significant difference between things. For instance, what an integrator is. So, do you mind defining what an integrator is from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I suppose an integrator, a jack of all trades wouldn't really be a great description, but an integrator would perhaps bring together several different technologies. So in that high-end residential world, that could be your music system, your speakers, your television, your air conditioning, your heating, and things like that. And sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
So those sorts of things, and bringing them together, trying to get them to work seamlessly and make it easier for the end client. But what it does do is it does give perhaps a great edge to how to make things slick and how to really be cool, and bringing that into lighting controls as to what you can link and join together is actually quite good. I mean, one of the things I always talk about is, with en suites in a bedroom, because if you're talking to anyone, and I mean, I cannot comprehend how anybody can have any room in any house without lighting controls. I just don't get it. Over here they talk about, oh yeah, just turn the big light on and there'll be one big pendant in the middle of the room, and it's like, and that's what they say. But the minute you start to get lamps or something as well, then you can just make it so much nicer. But again, we're trying to explain to why they need this, and you talk about having an ensuite, so that if somebody walks into the ensuite, find it, if it's in the daytime, the lights can come on at quite a bright level, because you're just doing something but perhaps if it's after dusk and before maybe 10 or 11 p.m., then it comes on at a lesser level because we don't need as much light. And then if it happens to come, if somebody walks in between 11 p.m. and dawn, we can make the assumption that maybe they're just nipping to the toilet or something like that, and just one of the lighting layers or circuits could just come on at 5%, just enough to find your way to the loo and come back again without glaring your eyes or waking you up, keeping you half asleep, and in fact that can run just automatically. And if they feel the urge to clean the bathroom at 3 a.m., fine, you can press a button and override it. And as soon as you hit the off button, if you get up early for a flight or something, but as soon as you hit the off button, it can just go back into that automatic mode. And people kind of go, oh yeah. And I say, but actually, you'll hardly ever use the buttons, maybe if you want, spa mode or something in the evening. But really, a lot of the time, and it's surprising how much you can just automate what you do every day. I mean, another one is just at home. Obviously, we have lighting control at home, and we, I have a little program. So if we go, away for the weekend, it does a few little things, and okay, fine, I get it to turn the telly on and turn it off and something like that. And but if our downstairs toilet, the light goes on and off 2 or 3 times in the night, people probably think I've got prostate problems or something like that. But but it does all of this when we're away, and the blinds go up and down automatically. But what was really interesting, I see in the room where we watch the TV, those lights come on and then they sort of, I think about 9 o'clock they dim down really low and go off. And anyway, just a really bizarre thing happened is we just set that a load of stuff. Again, it was in the away mode, and then one evening I was just sat watching the telly with my wife, and the lights kind of just went really dim, and it was like, all right. She's like going, oh, your rubbish system again, And anyway, I was hang on, why did that happen? Had to get to the bottom of it, and we'd actually had it running in this automatic mode for about 4 weeks since we got back and hadn't noticed. So it's amazing how much you can actually automate. And then look, when you do need to do a specific task or a specific activity, fine, you hit the button, you get what you want. But really, it's remarkable how much we can actually automate, simplify, and just have it do stuff for us without thinking. I mean, who would have thought you could go that long and not need to override a system?
It's funny. And obviously we see that a lot in the commercial world, right? There's a lot of automation in the systems. There's a lot of sensors. And you don't see as much of that in most people's homes. High-end residential, of course, right? But I don't think a lot of people in their house don't necessarily think about this. But it's not, even, outside of high-end residential, in your own home, it's not that difficult to do a lot of these tasks, right? It's a lot of this stuff is app-based now. It's pretty simple to use. You use the
Yeah.
bathroom reference. It's a perfect one. I have a color changing strip under my vanity, and it's the same thing. During the day, it turns on one color. At night, it's another. And after hours, like you said, if you just get up in the middle of the night, it's at a different color and a different intensity. So you can kind of navigate your way through without kicking your foot and hitting something, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So,
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand that the technology is out there and it's not necessarily that difficult to do, right? There are different layers and different levels depending on where you're at, but it doesn't have to be overly complicated. But you're right, there's so much automation that we can use in our day-to-day lives that people take for granted. And so just, taking sort of that step back from the high-end residential market, what's your advice to people to sort of take that first step who are afraid of that technology and how to do all of this?
Well, I mean, my big passion on all of this has been the ability to have scenes in a room. So that's where you can hit a button, or if it's too much effort to raise your arm, you can ask Alexa or Google or Siri to do it for you. But you hit a button, and the whole each circuit or zone, I think you called it, goes to a preset level and adjusts, and you get a particular effect. Now, with me lighting designer head on, that's what I'm all about. So you will want this room to feel bright and energetic, and we're going to read the newspapers, or we're going to do some arts and craft, but then you can have it change to a completely different feel, a nice, relaxing, cozy, snug, and all it is one button press. And I think once you start to talk about scenes and how easy it is to do, then people begin to get it. And that, to me, was always the drive. I mean, the energy saving automatic lights, PIR sensors, that was always level 2. But then, having said that, I mean, I don't have motion sensors in my hall stairs and landing yet. I've got them in a box. I've had them in a box for 2 or 3 years, but they're ready to go when I get time to do it. But to be quite honest, they're just on a little schedule anyway. The lights come on at 6:30. They get a bit brighter because I know I'm going to be walking down the stairs around that time to get some breakfast, and and they don't go off. They just stay on a tiny bit in the middle of the night. But that's just time schedules and dusk and dawn and specific times, and that's just great because there's none of this walking down the stairs and wondering, is there a doll or something left on the stairs for me to try and break my neck on? It's kind of practical and sensible as well, But I mean, I can't get across enough. Scenes is what I love the most about it. I mean, my kitchen, dining, sort of living space. I mean, I'm getting old. I've always known that as you get older, you need more light, and and I enjoy my cooking, so I have really bright lighting in the kitchen, and I can chop away, and no shadows. I can see everything I'm going to do, not chop my fingers off, and and then and because we do restaurant lighting, and I've employed a lot of those tricks and things in our open plan space. I can be pretentious. I have a button. It says restaurant on it. Yeah. But as soon as I finish cooking, when I go down to to eat my cheese on toast, I just hit the button and the whole room changes, and it just feels great. But even if it is just cheese on toast, it doesn't matter, because you sit there and you just go, oh, this is just lovely, and it's just a button. And again, the minute you've got more than 2 or 3 circuits, and you can really start to play with that. And the other thing that really helps people get their head around the scenes, and it's something we do a lot with on the CEDIA talks and classes, is I sort of approach it as nouns and verbs. So the old school way is it's nouns. So you have a switch or a dimmer for your downlights or cans. You might have a switch or dimmer for the pendant. You might have a switch or dimmer for the sconces or wall lights, under cabinets. Those are nouns. Those are things. And you can end up, and I think I shared with you guys a photo, and it's got like 11 switches and dimmers on it. And that was a photo from a real house I went to, and I was asking him, oh right, what do they all do? I was, as I say over here, I was acting the maggot a little bit, because he didn't know what my background was, and he said, oh yeah, well that one's the pendant on the dining table, this one does the kitchen lights, and the others, yeah, they all do something small and nice. but it was a really expensive. It was a stunning place, but it was, but he just never used it, so you just make it too awkward to use by kind of trying to be too simple. Whereas if he just had 5 or 6 buttons, cooking, dining, chilling, partying, relax. I mean, there's, you only need 4 or 5. I mean, you can get away with bright, dim, and off, really.
Right.
You don't use that many. But yeah, verbs and nouns. The verbs is a great one, and that ties very well back with lighting design. And this is even in the commercial world as well. Is what needs to happen in this space? What do people need to be able to do? Or what are they trying to do? And it's all verbs. Cooking, cleaning, dining, partying. It's all verbs. Now, but then one of the nice things with the CEDIA classes is, and I personally get a lot out of it as we're talking about scenes and stuff. And I mean, I don't like this morning, afternoon, evening and stuff. I mean, that's great for a restaurant, really good for a restaurant, because the staff can't screw it up. But for a home or something, what do you mean morning or evening? I mean, what are you doing? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But then some people said, welcome. I thought, it's not a verb really, so I do have a problem with that. But it's, I mean, I'm just back from programming a system today, and I was just explaining to what's this home and away button do? I says, well, when you go away, it does this. I said, but when you get home, it'll put your lights on, but it'll put lights on throughout all the corridors and all the hallways and the kitchen, with the room that you're probably going to go into, and and you can, it's just a great scene name. It's just a shame it's not a verb, but I can make exceptions for some stuff.
No, and I really love that, the verbs and nouns representation, because you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of people, when they are designing a lighting control system, especially in the commercial world, they might focus on the nouns. But that being the case, you might have 20 switches as a result of that. And most end users don't focus on the nouns. They focus on the verbs. And so having a verb really makes a lot more sense. And especially because, to your earlier point, if you automate things correctly, you don't need to touch the switches. And so the only time you would need to engage with those switches is when you're trying to do something that is out of the norm. And so those verbs would be an abnormal verb, not a consistent verb. Although, having a I'm coming home button and you need to nudge awake the system, or you need to tell the system you're leaving, like that's a different story. But like, if you're already in the space and you're walking through it and you're just trying to engage with stuff in the space, there's a routine that you typically follow. And so I think that's part of this whole conversation that needs to happen with the end users for their systems is, okay, what are you doing in these spaces? And so if you don't mind just giving us a little bit of a window into those conversations that you might have with clients when you start up a new project.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of very much the conversation we've just had, and some of the examples, and it's as if that the light bulb goes on and they go, all right, I now get what this is all about. And and it's like having air conditioning and cruise control in your car, your electric windows. You don't need it, but once you've had it, You could never go back to not having it, But
Right.
but there is a bit of a proviso on that. Is it does irk me. I do see companies going, oh yeah, we can sell lighting controls, we can make this margin on the job. Yeah, we'll set it up. Yeah, we've done some scenes for you, 100%, 75%, 50%, and there you go. And I'm like, but that's only the first sort of half of the job. And again, like the job I was at today, it's a case of, right, we've got you up and running. You're now playing with the lighting, but and I some of the electrical contractors that I work with, and I just go, right. I said, yeah, your job is to get in and get it done. I said, but my job is to cuddle the client, and I'm all about, right, now you've got familiar with the scenes. Did you know that we can give you some secret stuff? With a double press or a long press, but you can't just dump that all on them at day one, because they'll just be going, oh, this is just too complicated to blow my head and I don't know what to do, so yes, I think once they get scenes, to me that's the most important thing. And the ensuite and the hall stairs landing is very easy to do, but then again it's like, oh yeah, you can just do the schedule for your outside lighting. You have it on and off when you want, and we can do this. And I think that a lot of people kind of go, oh yeah, we'd look to embrace some smart stuff. Can you tell us about it? And that then you can then lead on from there. But I think, I actually quote, because in the early days I was thinking, oh, I'm struggling to be competitive on this, and everybody's like, Andy, but your labour's too high. Labour's too high. I said, well, it can't be that high, because I'm not exactly, driving around in a Porsche or anything. But I break it down now, as I say, here's what here's to work out your system, and here's to get it up and running so you can move in and you can use it. I says, and then here's where the magic really happens, and we get it really tailored to your life and how you do it, and just really complimenting and cuddling you. Then it's great. I says, but look, I can set it up with a few buttons to do that. I says, that's great. There's that's not much programming. I don't have to charge you a lot, but it's then just getting really adjusting it, doing the scenes with them if they want. Some of them are great and they're well into it and they'll play away, and they really, really do get into it. And others just need a bit more help, or just come and hold their hands, or do a couple of rooms. But again, it's kind of the scenes is inextricably linked to the lighting design. And again, if we've been involved in the lighting design, then I can almost do the scenes whilst I'm doing the design, really, and say, here's how you might have it, and okay, yeah, you can. But again, it's also fantastic is that with the app control now, is people can edit the scenes themselves. I mean, I've always been an advocate for that. I've always hated paying people to come and do stuff for me that I feel I could probably be able to do myself. So gone are the days of charging a load of money to just change what the scenes are. Now I'm just all about giving them as much control as they can. I mean, I'll help them, and if they want me to do it, of course we can do it. But once they get the gist of it, and as I say, a lot of the interfaces are very good these days. They're well able to use it themselves. So and even the ones that think they can't, it's always great fun. You just say, well, look, let's just do it, and just say, look, I'm not even going to teach you how to do it, but just see if you could, select this scene in the kitchen for me from the app. And it's like, oh, okay, well, kitchen, yeah. Okay, yeah, dining, yeah, press that. Okay, there you go. Now the apps are great, but and the people that, oh yeah, we could just do it all on the app. And it's like, no, you do need buttons on the wall. You're going to walk into a kitchen to make a cup of tea. The last thing you want to be doing is, oh, hang on, unlock my phone, open the app, right, kitchen, lights, forget that. We've made, if when you're doing that, we've made people's lives worse, not better. But when you can walk in and you tap it, but for them to be able to adjust it themselves, then yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but they can get it just right. They haven't had to call anybody out. They're just in control of their own destiny. And I think, again, with a lot of tech, people like that, and they don't like being beholden to a company or to an integrator or to a programmer. You might be busy partying that night and doesn't really want to help them. So sometimes that happens. So yeah, so the app technology is great to help people, but yeah, I think I'd say just getting into working out the scenes. There's not that many. People think that there's loads you have a scene for this. It's like, no, I mean you could really just get away with bright, dim, and off if you wanted, because bright you'd be able to do loads of stuff. Dim would be nice and cozy. You're just chilling. I have created a verb called TVing, which gets me out, which does kind of fit in with my scenes. Although we then end up changing it to cinema because it sounds a lot grander, But TV, yeah. But yeah, it's great, and I think once people get their head around scenes, then it's then they'll start to use the lighting loads more, and as ever with lighting, is once people are conscious of it and they have a chat, then they're out looking and they go, yeah, we saw that place, and have you been to this place, because the lighting's horrible in there? And I'm going, yeah, I've noticed that, but only once your eyes are open to lighting do you get it. So but yeah, scenes are just the best.
Yeah. So, all right. So you're really obviously into the controls and the scenes, but you mentioned something a few minutes ago about contractors sort of using the lighting controls to, pad their pockets a little bit, right? They can sell the control system, make a little bit of extra money, and they give you very simple scenes, 175, 50 off. And they're not that interested.
Yeah, I mean, the systems work. Yeah.
Right. They're not that interested in really helping set up the scenes there, or necessarily really providing the best user interface. Someone needs to do this, and they're taking that path to do that. So, and that I think is something that's very different and we've talked about this before on the show, but that's something that's very different in the residential market from the commercial market that we normally deal with and talk to people about, right? Controls design is its own thing, and it's very special. But in the residential market, in some cases, it's almost an afterthought. So how do you, right? You mentioned sort of the pricing. How do you sort of help people understand that and separate, yourself from the pack, and let people know why controls are so important, so that they don't just buy the standard package through the electrical contractor?
Yeah, I mean, I itemize out, three different lots of labor. The first one would be the design, and I like to, I've always, not OCD, but I've always liked my detail and a lot of things I do and being precise. And so the paperwork and all the information up front, so everybody knows exactly what's got to happen, and minimal questions, is the first section. Then the second one is sort of commissioning, setting it up, getting it going, as I put, to a basic level. And then I have a third line item, which isn't normally a massive figure, but it does do a little note that's saying, look, but this can go on as much as you want it to. But but in fairness, I'm very fortunate, because with the residential clients, a lot of them become kind of like friends, really, that they do. So and it's great because you can only really commission lighting systems and scenes in the evening, and then we're all getting on and we're all happy. So we have wine, and it's just a great evening. I mean, you always need a taxi or a bus back. You'll never be driving back from one of these sessions, which is, but it's lovely, and then you think about it, you're having such a lovely evening as well with your clients, and they're doing this and woo and wow and just helping them out. So I put it on as a separate line item, and then they don't have to have it. If we've inspired them to enjoy the lighting and scenes enough, then they're well able to adjust it all themselves and get on with it. But we'd usually do something like that one. But commercial jobs, I mean, I love them and I hate them. Of course, we all love them, because here's your order. This is exactly what you've got to do. And I'm there going, yeah, I can do that. But that's not what they want. It's not what they need. They need this. It's like, and you're fighting the urge to do a really great job and make it the most awesome thing ever. And then the other half is going, yeah, but just tick the box, get paid. Tick the box, get paid. That's what it's about. It's like, yeah, but the box is bloody wrong, So I find the commercial stuff very frustrating, because I just want to do more and help more and get more involved. I just don't kind of have it in me to say, yeah, it's just not right. They've got all this stuff. They should be using it, as it's able to. And it's just the fact that whoever's spec'd it has just copied and pasted from something else, or not really got into them. But anyway, yeah. So I do enjoy the residential stuff a lot more. Not only for the wine, but so you can just really help people and get you can just really make a difference. Whereas the commercial one, you're a lot more restricted. We should be a lot more restricted, but we do it anyway. Yeah.
It's so funny to hear your perspective of the commercial world, because you're
Mhm.
spot on. I mean,
Yep.
the reality of the situation is that you don't have that much autonomy over your lighting control system as you do in the residential world. And additionally, there are so many groups out there that are guilty of copy pasting their systems from
Mhm.
one project to another. And so you're dead on with that.
Oh, yeah, you can see
The
it
one
when it comes in. Yeah, you can see it. It's like nobody that knows what they're doing actually wrote that.
But I think, from your perspective in the residential world, is there something that the commercial world could learn from to do better? Not just other than don't copy paste.
Well, I think it's the specifying. I think perhaps it's the same with the residential. To a degree, a entry simple level of lighting control, anybody can get their head around it. Electricians can deliver an element of lighting control without getting too complicated. I guess it's because we're fortunate that we we're maybe involved what we could call advanced lighting control, so we can see all of these other things that could be done. Whereas it's like that one where the minute you realize, the minute you know what you don't know, that there is stuff that you don't know, then all of a sudden you've got a much more appreciation from it. But if you just come in and you've just done some basic stuff, and you've got all the confidence and you think you've done really well, and you're oblivious to what actually can be done, then you can be a bit dangerous passing it off. So that's it, that's done. I mean, it's funny. I've had a growing relationship over a couple of years with a mechanical electrical consultant, and we sort of started out, and the stuff's coming on, and I'd be on, and of course, I love to talk and meet the clients, and I want to know all about what they do, what their weekends are like, what are your evenings like, and all of this sort of stuff. And the more I know, the more I can design the lighting for, and everything like that. But these jobs have all started, and it's like, no, well, this is what they want, and and I'm looking at it sometimes, I'm like going, who designed the lighting for this? Oh yeah, well, we did it in house. It's like, oh, okay, there are other lights than cans and downlights. There are other things we can use, and which is another side is an amazing guy, John Bullock, and he used to present a course called Lighting Design Without Using Downlights. And it's a brilliant class, and it's always the first thought it should be. But anyway, but as we're getting on and doing more stuff together, and I mean, and these are jobs where I would never get close to the client, that the client's too busy, doesn't have the time, too famous or whatever. And then only last night on the latest project that we're talking about, and it was, Andy, yeah. Can we bring them down to see you? And they, can we go through everything with you? And he is getting the more we can pull out of it, then the far better we can do. So whereas, but he's only got that from me, persistently saying, I know you said you don't want motion sensing in the halls because they've got dogs running around, but we can do this, we can do that, we can do this, they can switch it off, blah, 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 and I do promise that I will never raise this again on this project in a meeting, whatever your final answer is, but I really think you should reconsider it again, so it's, so I say, but he's more aware of it, whereas before it'd be like, yeah, look, this is what we want, and so it's a tough one, because you don't know what you don't know, and You know, we're in a lucky position that we know a good bit about lighting controls. You know, but if it ever came to, if it was for me ever to, I need a decent podcast microphone, I'd be like, oh, Amazon, hey, there's one for $15. Yeah, great. What could go wrong?
It's so funny, right? Because at the end of the day, it really does come down to education, right? Automating your controls a lot of times comes down to educating the end users what's capable, and we see that all the time, right? We're on job sites, and we'll talk to the end users about just basic scheduling. They're so used to the system and the switches, and it's like, right, but we can create an off at 2 a.m. at midnight, so just to sweep the building and make sure that everything's off if there's no motion detected. And we can make sure that people didn't manually leave lights on. We can go through those spaces and do that. And like, they're like, oh, I didn't realize you could do that. And like, you can lock out entry button stations. If you don't want these stations and these public hallways to be active during the day, you don't have to have them active during the day. They can be active after hours only. And, we can reset it that if it's a manual lockout, that at 5 a.m. every morning, they unlock again. And there's all these features that different systems have that people don't think about. And it's not their fault. They don't know what they don't know. And we need advocates. We need people like you who are so passionate about what they do to really sit with the end users and talk to them and get them to understand this. And that's one of the things we talk about the most is on any controls project, I don't care, residential, commercial, if you don't have that direct path to the owner, it's really hard to have the most successful project because you're not able to have those direct conversations and really understand their wants and needs and help them to understand things that maybe they hadn't considered or thought about, and different ways to look at the lighting control system, and understand that you can use verbs instead of nouns.
Yeah, I know you're absolutely right, and it riled me for a long time. So I found a way to do that. I've been meaning to do it for about 3 years, and I finally got a bit of time over Christmas just gone to get it done. And it was partly inspired by a random email that came in on my Google, and it said, "Oh, you've now got access to Google Video," and it was like, what? Was that like more streaming? Anyway, but it isn't. It's a sort of like a little video creation software thing that I'd been meaning to get into for a long time, and because I had so much I wanted to say. I like to type out a sales proposal for a lighting control system, and that. I mean, I just lose the will to live. Anything that takes more than a page to read, I just, I don't have the interest in it. And I wanted to get all this across. Anyway, so what I've been doing, and I was doing it in January, and all 3 months so far this year of each month was a record month. It's just gone nuts, and I'm kind of doing a 1 or 2 page document with just the basics on it. And then I'm putting together, and I try to keep them down to 3 or 4 minute videos. And I can have, pictures of the keypads. I can talk about going to your ensuite in the middle of the night. It does this, or we could talk about, we can stop your kids from, using the keypads between these times. And I just put all these things in. Now, I say on some of our projects, I don't get ever to meet the end users and stuff, but I can put all this in. It's a little video. Everybody will watch a 3-minute video, especially when it's titled, "This is a 3-minute video talking about this." Oh yeah, I'll find the 3 minutes, whilst I'm sat on the loo or something like that, but at least I'll watch it. And so I'm actually getting into the client's ear. I'm not necessarily meeting them, but then it's great because it's been a really, really successful way of saying, look, here's the message. Because, if you want to send me 5 pages explaining what I can do in a bit of technical jargon, it's really, these people are busy people. They've got other things to do, or if it's commercial and, they're just busy making money so they can pay for all of this. Whereas, I find it being a really, really helpful way, and it really helps them engage. And, and also I can see, because I just do like a private link on YouTube, and I can see how many times it's been viewed. Oh yeah, the architect, the interior designer. Oh, okay, right. This is now being viewed 7 or 8 times. Well, this is interesting because either somebody's showing it to somebody else, or at least the clients watched it. So it's a really good way of getting these, the brilliance of what we can give them into somebody's ear, even if we're not able to meet with them or chat with them, And again, all the nuances in a commercial lighting control system. We say, look, we can do all of this, we can do all of that. I mean, I like to use the phrases, you're really lucky because the system you've got does everything we've got it doing for you, but it can also do all of this, and this. So when you've got to grips with that one, and you think you might want to get a bit cleverer, give us a shout, and we can come back and help you out.
Nice. Well, we're almost out of time here, but I kind of want to encapsulate at least a portion of what you've been talking about here, because I mean, this is all really great stuff and really important to hear from the commercial side, but also just from the side of lighting controls in general, because you really do have a unique opportunity that most people in the commercial world don't, which is that opportunity to talk specifically directly with the owners, the stakeholders, people who are actually going to be using the system. Whereas in the commercial world, it's a little bit harder to get that conversation. But I think that, again, the word use of verbs and nouns really does kind of encapsulate that educational element that you're trying to drive home, which is focusing on how scenes work. Once you can get past how scenes work, you really have a lot more ability to navigate in what you're trying to discuss with the end users on the system. So once they understand that idea of scenes, how you can program scenes and how scenes can interact with their life, and distilling it to verbs and nouns. So it's like, okay, do you want your scene to control this thing, or do you want this scene to control this action or facilitate this action? And I think that that's a really great way of starting that conversation. And to your point, you can't have your complete conversation at the beginning of the project. You're not only going to just end up really frustrated, but also you're going to terrorize the person who's going to be using the system, because it's like, why do I need to think about this? What about so starting simple, like, just tell me about what you're doing in these spaces, which is, again, on par with a lot of other people have said when they do have that opportunity to talk with people. Tell me about what you're doing here. Let's go through the scenario. Let's talk through the story. And this helps add to that capability. And so, after that, once you've established that foundation of what scenes can do, then you can get into automation. And automation really is the sweet component to lighting controls that people ignore in a lot of cases, because of the fact that it's like, I just need a switch on the wall. And it's like, well, why do you need to have that switch? Why should you need to ever think about lighting? If you have a system that can automate based on your routine, based on everything else that you already know about yourself, why would you need that manual control point, except for when you deviate from your norm? And so again, that's that, tell me about your routine. Okay, when would you deviate from that routine? These conversations can be very easily had with homeowners and with building owners or facilities managers, even, just talking through what's normal and what's abnormal. And as a result, you can really get to the heart of what a good lighting control system design would look like. Does the person need that manual control because they don't have a routine and they're just so all over the place, and they really need that they need 21 blank switches because they really need that level of control? Or is it somebody who wakes up at the exact same time every single day, goes into the bathroom at the exact same time every day, and like, can you follow that structure, and can they utilize that? Because to your point, people who live with an automated system might not even realize the system is there until something weird happens. You were sitting and watching TV with your wife and the lights dimmed a little bit, but you realize that you had gone 3 weeks without thinking about the system. And that's a good lighting controls design. A good lighting controls design is not noticed, not thought about. And so, that's the real core of this message, is understanding who's using the system, why they're using the system, and when they need to actually physically interact with the system, as opposed to the system just automating behind, in the background. So I think that this is really important stuff that people need to think through when it comes to lighting controls design.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the common ones with Cedar and with Bruce Clark, one of your previous guests, and we talk about with the sort of human-centric lighting. Whilst I'm not a fan of the way that a lot of people approach it, but the concept of it, and every single time it's, oh yeah, well, we try to do it, but every day, but people don't always do the same thing at the same time of day, and we were trying to set a routine, and sometimes it is, and then what if they want to do that, and it was always really, really negative, but it was like, guys, yeah, but you just have a button for it. It's, for when you want to do something. It's no different to not having an automated scene and then selecting the button to do your dining and you do this and do the other. You can still do all of that. It's just everything else in the background is just rumbling along and a nice little thing, making it all look pretty. And it's absolutely no different to what you're doing now, other than there's a background pattern and rhythm to the home, and that's it. The best bits and the best designs and everything else, they're just really simple, and it is as simple as that.
Yeah, awesome. Andy, thank you so much. That was an absolutely fantastic conversation. I'm sure our listeners are going to get a ton out of it, and taking away just your passion for this, and just, I hope people pick up even just a smidge of what you have, because it's just absolutely fascinating, and it's so refreshing to hear and listen to. And thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us this evening.
Yeah, you're very welcome. We always enjoy lighting, and we barely scratched the surface of what I thought we'd be talking about. So maybe we'll have to do it again at some point when you get really, really low at the bottom of the dregs of people to talk to. Then, give us a shout.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will close us out and remind everyone today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association, and Light Fair. Coming up in just a few short weeks, we will see you guys there.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes, a lot of other information, including information on the NAILD Lighting Specialist in Controls certification happening this June, right before Lightovation. So if you want to learn about lighting controls and then check out some showrooms at the same time, it's definitely worth your time to take a look at the opportunity here and register for it. But also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode, which we could not do this show without, MaxLight, maxlite.com/CMAX. CMAX is their lighting controls platform, which is designed for their lighting fixtures and other fixtures as well. But the real unique component, again, as I mentioned, the USB-C element, that patented technology, really gives it a leg up on a lot of other systems where you have that ability to swap components out really easily. You can start with just the most basic lighting controls, or you can start with no lighting controls and then layer it on as you go through the project. If the project needs fixtures on site immediately, but not necessarily controls, you can phase that, which is amazing. I really encourage you to check out their systems that they have available, indoor and outdoor systems. But go to maxlite.com/CMAX to learn more about it. But thank you so much for joining us. And Andy, really appreciate you joining us today. This was an awesome conversation.